Hello everyone, welcome to week 1 lecture 7, demand and supply analysis. In today's lecture, we are going to study demand and supply in a perfectly competitive market setting. Now, when we say perfectly competitive market setting here, we're referring to a market where there are so many buyers and sellers such that no buyer or seller has the ability to influence the price. As such, both the buyers and sellers are regarded as price takers. In a perfectly competitive market setting, the market is fragmented. Because the market is fragmented, we have numerous buyers and sellers, and each one selling the products, each one taking the market price as given. If seller wants to increase the price, one particular seller decides to increase the price in the market, that particular seller will risk losing customers. So every seller in this market setting will have to sell at the prevailing market price. So we're going to look at also the changes in demand. What's a change in demand? What's a change in the quantity demanded? And we're going to look at movement along the demand curve and then the shift in the curve. The same thing also will be done for supply. Change in supply and the change in quantity supply. Now we're going to also look at the concept of elasticity and equilibrium in the market. Then we'll then try to see what happens in the market when there is excess demand or excess supply. When there is excess demand, what is going to happen to the price? Then when there is excess supply, what is going to happen to the price? Is the price going to increase or decrease when there is excess supply? Or are we going to experience any upward movement or downward movement of the price when there is excess supply? And when there is excess demand, is there going to be an upward pressure on the prices or a downward pressure on the prices? So these are some of the things that we are going to study today. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this lecture, I said, focuses mainly on demand and supply analysis in a perfectly competitive market setting. So a perfectly competitive market is a market in which there are so many buyers and sellers. You have fragmented buyers and sellers. So much that no buyer or seller has the ability to influence the price. So as such, both the buyers and sellers are price takers in this particular market. Demand refers to the amount that consumers are willing and able to buy at a particular price in a given period of time. Now, when we say demand, we are not simply referring to want. You may want to have so many goods. You may want to have a car, you want to have a big house, preferably a mansion. You want to have maybe the best clothing. But do you have the resources to acquire all these goods? Do we have the resources to acquire all these goods? So, if we want maybe to have so many things, but we do not have the resources to acquire all of them, then we have to prioritize. In other words, we have to put our wants in a scale of preference. We buy the goods that are most preferred at the moment and leave the other good for the future. So in that particular case, if you want to have so many things, but the resources, that is the purchasing power, your ability to buy them, the price, you are not able to buy them because you do not have the purchasing power to buy them, then that want is not demand. It means you are not going to buy the good, so the want is not backed by the ability, which is the purchasing power. So demand here refers to what? Want backed by the ability to buy the good. And what is the ability? The ability is the resources, the purchasing power to buy it. If I'm a millionaire, I can afford to buy a mansion. I want to live in a mansion. I am a millionaire. I have the money. I'll go and buy it. So it becomes what? Buying the mansion having the mansion becomes what? Demand. But as a student, you will not be able to afford to buy a mansion. Even though you may want to buy it, you may want to have it, but you can't have it because you don't have the wherewithal. You don't have the purchasing power. You don't have the money or the resources to buy that. And so that want is not backed by the ability. And so it is not demand. It can only be demand if the want is backed by the ability, which is the purchasing power. So that is why if you look at that definition, it says it refers to the amount that consumers are willing and able, the word able to buy. You are actually willing. That is, the want is there. But the ability to buy it, which is what? The purchasing power, the resources is not there. So it is not demand. So a demand refers to the amount that consumers are willing. The word willing. The word willing here is very, very, very important. You are willing. You want to buy it. Right? And able. The word able. Able means you have the wherewithal. You have the resources. You have the purchasing power. And so because of that, you have the ability to buy the good. And so it becomes demand. At a particular price in a given period of time. So that is what demand is. Now, what is now the demand curve? The demand curve is a graphical representation between price and the quantity demanded, holding all other factors constant. Now, we are going to hold all the other factors that affect demand. Here, when we are drawing the demand curve, we have to hold all the other factors affecting demand constant. What are those factors? It is very simple. The factors are what? Price of related goods, the income of the consumer, taxation, population, the weather, etc. There are so many factors that affect the demand for a good. A host of factors, expectation of future rises and fall in prices. These are all the factors that affect demand. So when we are drawing the demand curve, we are going to hold all those other factors constant. So which variables are we only going to consider here? It is only the quantity and the price of the good itself. So these are the two variables that we are going to consider. Now, if we don't hold all those other variables constant, it doesn't make sense to have the demand curve. It will be very difficult to have the demand curve. So that is why in economics, when we want to draw the demand curve, we have to hold all the other factors that affect demand constant. We assume that those variables are L fixed. Once they are constant, then we can draw the demand curve, which slopes downwards from left to right. That is to say, if the price of a good increases, we expect the demand for that good to fall. Similarly, if the price of the good falls, we expect the demand for that good to increase. So as a result, both demand and supply move in opposite directions. Both of them move in opposite direction. In other words, here, we say demand is a decreasing function of the price. It is a decreasing function of the price. That is to say, when the price goes up, the demand will fall. And when the price falls, the demand will increase. So as such, there is an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. Now, this brings us to the law of demand, which states that an increase in price of a commodity, the word ceteris paribus, means what? All else remain equal. All other factors remains equal. All else remains the same. Ceteris paribus state that an increase in price of a commodity, ceteris paribus, all else equal, results in a fall in the quantity demanded. In other words, the law of demand refers to what? The inverse relationship between quantity demanded and the price of a good. So when all other factors that influence demand are held constant, right? So we have a situation where the price, the QDP is less than 0. The derivative of the quantity demanded with respect to the price is less than 0. That is why we have this dQdP equals to less than 0. That means demand is a decreasing function of price, right? Demand is a decreasing function. Decreasing function. Okay, let me remove this one. Function of what? Of the price, right? Of the price. Voila. Right? So demand is a decreasing function of the price. That is when the price goes up, the demand will fall, and vice versa. Okay, let's move on. Now I try to have this one, the individual demand schedule, which is just a representation of you know, the price and the quantity in the form of a table. Now you see when the price of coffee is 20 cents and the individual buys 5 cups, and then it goes up to 30, demand falls to what? The demand falls to what? To 4, right? When it continues to increase, what happens? What happens? The demand continues to fall. And when it goes to maybe 60 cents, I can't afford to buy that coffee at that price, so I'm not going to buy anything, right? So in that particular case, the point will be what? On the vertical axis. So that means the consumer is not going to buy anything when the maximum willingness to pay, when the price is what? Is greater than the maximum willingness to pay. So the maximum that this consumer can pay for the coffee is 50 cents. So if it goes to 60 cents per cup, then it will not be able to buy, right? So he will not be able to buy anything at that particular price. So that is why the quantity demanded at that particular price, 60 cents, is just 0, right? So what do you observe here? What we observe here is the price and the quantity. The price and the quantity move in opposite direction. They move in opposite direction. So as a result, here, the price and the quantity move in opposite direction, right? When the price goes up, see when the price is increasing from 20 cents to 60 cents, the demand continues to fall. And when the price is decreasing, sorry, from 60 cents to 20 cents, what happens there? The demand increases, right? So the demand is going to increase whenever the price is falling, right? Whenever the price is falling, the demand is going to increase. Okay? So that is the relationship between the demand and the supply. So that is the relationship between demand and supply. So now, let's move forward here. Let's move forward. So if we can represent what we have in the previous slide in a form of graph here, we're going to have a downward sloping demand curve, right? Now, we see the price of coffee is on the vertical axis, and the quantity of coffee is on the horizontal axis, right? So what do we see here? Price is on the vertical axis, and the quantity is on the horizontal axis, right? On the horizontal axis, okay? And so we see that when price is increasing, the demand fall, and when price is falling, the demand will increase. So what do you observe here? There is one thing we observe here. We are, as I said earlier, we only have two variables, X and Y, and Q and P. We don't have any other variable like the price of related goods, the income of the consumer, maybe other exogenous factors like taxation. We don't have that one, right? So it is a simple graph, a simple diagram that shows the relationship between the price and the quantity. Quantity on the horizontal axis, and then price on the vertical axis. Okay. Now you see, at a price of 60, what do you observe at a price of 60? At a price of 60, what do you observe at a price of 60? At a price of 60, 0 units of coffee or 0 cups of coffee will be what? Bought, okay? So the consumer is going to buy 0 cups of coffee at a price of 60, right? So, and what happens here at this quantity here? Let's say, now this one could be like a 6, right? Let's say it could be 6, right? Because this is 5, and let's say this one could be like 6, right? Okay. So, at that quantity of 6, so we have the price will be what? The price will be 0, right? So the price will be 0. So if it is 0 cents, then the consumer is going to buy 6 units, right? Okay. That is to say, if the coffee is offered for free, it is offered for free, right? There is no commanding price there. So the consumer is going to buy 6 cups. It's going to acquire 6 cups, right? So let's keep on going. Now let's look at the demand function here. Now we have talked about this one earlier. The demand function is a decreasing function of the own price, of the price of the goods itself. Quantity demanded and price move in opposite direction. They do not move in the same direction. They move what? In opposite direction. If price goes up, then quantity will go down, right? And vice versa. So the direct demand function is therefore represented as what? QD equals A minus BPD. Where A is what? The intercept term, and B is what? And B is greater than 0. Is a slope parameter. Remember, B is greater than 0. B is positive there, okay? It is positive there. But what happened? Because of that negative sign, it means when price goes down, demand will increase, right? So intuitively, B reflects how the price of the good affects the quantity demanded. So minus B there reflects how the price of the good affects the quantity demanded. Okay. Now, so in most cases, you have this as the direct demand function, which is QD equals to A minus PD, BPD, right? So this is called the direct demand function. But in most computation, especially when we try to obtain the profit maximizing level of output, we are going to use the inverse demand function. That is to say, instead of having quantity as a function of the price, we're going to have price as a function of the quantity. Okay? So it is just a way of what? Transforming the direct demand function to obtain the inverse demand function. We transform the direct demand function or direct demand equation in order to obtain the inverse demand function. Okay? And what do we do there? We take minus QD minus BPD to the other side of the equation, and then we'll take minus QD to the other side of the equation. Remember, when you transpose a term, the sign in front of the term changes, and so minus BPD becomes BPD, and then QD becomes minus QD, okay? So that's why we have minus QD here. And so if we divide both sides by the coefficient of PD, we're going to have PD equals to A over B minus 1 over B QD, right? So for any linear and downward sloping demand curve, right, it has what? A corresponding what? Inverse demand function, right? So the inverse demand function refers to an equation of the demand curve that expresses price as a function of the quantity demanded. That is the inverse. And this is what you need to obtain before you derive the profit maximizing level of output for a farm. If the demand is given as QD equals to A minus BPD, please transform that to what? An inverse demand function before you do your computation, okay? Before you find the profit function, or maybe before you find the revenue function, the profit function, and then the derivative, or before you go to relative maxima and then minima. You get the point I'm making? So it is very, very simple and straightforward. You are given the demand for the good. Now, let's say the farm produces a good which has a demand function, you know, of the form QD equals to, let's say, 5 minus 2 PD. Then they want you to find the profit maximizing level of output when the cost is given. So all you need to do is to what? To transform that quantity, that direct demand function to an inverse demand function, and then use that inverse demand function, which is the price, to obtain the revenue, because price times quantity equals to the revenue, okay? So that is what you need to do for all demand functions. In some cases, you'll be given the indirect demand function or the inverse demand function. So if you are given the inverse demand function, there is no need for you to transform it again. Okay? All you need to do is to multiply by the quantity to get the revenue. You get the point I'm making? So if you are given the inverse demand function, there is no need to do any otherwise. Okay? So let's continue. Now, the inverse demand function and the choke price. The choke price. What is the choke price? The choke price for both the direct and the corresponding inverse demand function is the same, right? The choke price for both the direct and indirect, for both direct and the corresponding inverse demand function is the same. It is always the same. So what is the choke price? What is the choke price? The choke price is just the price at which the quantity demanded equals to 0. That is the choke price. The choke price for a good is the price at which the quantity demanded for that good is equals to 0. That is the choke price. Okay? If you want to know about the choke price, please go back to week 1 and then read the demand analysis. I think something is there about the choke price, so you can go over that one again. If you still are not comfortable with this one, please go back there and then read the notes, okay? And so let's move on. So suppose the demand function for maize is represented as QD equals to 100 minus 4 PD. Now, what is the inverse function here? The inverse demand function is what? Is PD equals to 25 minus 1 over 4 QD. We obtain this one by simply what? Transposing minus 4 PD to the other side and then QD to the other side of the equation, to the right side of the equation. Minus 4 PD to the left and then QD to the right. Okay? So if you take minus 4 PD to the left, you're going to have what? 4 PD, right? And then if you take QD to the right hand side, what are you going to have? Minus QD. That's it. Okay? So we now have what? Minus 4 PD equals to 100 minus QD, right? So what do we do here? We divide both sides by 4, and then we have 4 PD over 4, right? Now 4 cancel 4, right? And then we divide 100 again by 4. Then we divide QD again by 4. What happened here? This is 1, and this is what? 25. You got it? Good. 25. So they become PD equals to 25 minus 1 over 4 QD. Remember, QD over 4 is 1 over 4 QD, okay? 1 over 4 is 0.25, right? So this becomes the inverse demand function. So this is called the inverse demand function. This is the inverse, okay? And so what is the choke price here? The choke price is what? It's just what? 25, right? The choke price is 25, right? So now let's look at this inverse demand function. And then let's look at this direct demand function, right? Let's look at these two. Now, QD is 100 minus 4 PD, right? Okay. Now, what is the choke price for this one? Now, all you need to do is to set QD equals to 0. If you set QD equals to 0, then it becomes 0 equals to 100 minus 4 PD, right? Now, take minus 4 PD to the right, to the left-hand side, becomes 4 PD equals to what? 100. Divide both sides by 4, and then the choke price becomes what? PD becomes 25, right? Right? So that's how you find the choke price there. Now, for this one, what is the choke price here? It's also simple. What do? You set QD what? To 0, right? So, of course, this one is very simple now. If you set QD equals to 0, then this second term, 1 over 4 QD collapses because 1 over 4 multiplied by 0, right? Or 0 multiplied by anything is 0, right? So 0 multiplied by anything is 0. So 1 over 4 QD becomes 0. And so 25 minus 0 is just 25. So the choke price here again is equal to 25. Right? So the choke price here again is 25. Right? Equals to 25. Maybe 25 cents or $25, whatever. Got it? So that is the choke price. So whether you are dealing with the direct demand function, or maybe the inverse demand function, the choke price is always the same. Because the choke price here is the price at which the quantity demanded equals to 0. If you equate QD to 0 for the direct demand function, you're going to get a choke price of 25. And then for the inverse demand function, if you equate QD to 0 again, the choke price is also going to be 25. Okay, so that's why we say here, for both the direct and inverse demand function, the choke price is always the same. Now let's look at the market demand curve here. What is the market demand curve? The market demand curve is just the horizontal summation of all the individual demand curves. All of them, all of the consumers in the market, right? So it is the horizontal summation of all the individual demand curves. Now, let's take, for example, here, we have individual A. Now, this is individual A's demand curve. And then you have individual B's demand curve, which is given as this, right? At the same price of $3, this man is able to buy 8 units. And then same price is able to buy 10 units. So you can tell from these three individuals, the one who is richer, you know, you can tell the person who has, you know, who is wealthier than the other. Now you know this guy is a poor person. Now you see how the demand curve, this demand curve is steeper than this one. Now the demand curve here is what? Is flatter relative to these ones. So you see, for a poor person here, the poor person has no choice. Now we're going to see this one later on when we deal with the price of elasticity. When we look at elasticity of demand and supply, you're going to see how the demand for poor people, you know, is very, very inelastic, you know. So, and then for those wealthy people, you see how their demand curve is flatter. So now, if we look at this one, we try to find the horizontal summation of all these individual demand curve. We're going to get a flatter demand curve, which is the market demand curve. So this is the market demand, right? So it sums all the individual demands, right? So we know demand is what? The willingness and ability of a consumer to buy a good, right? So let's move on. Now let's sum the individual demands here. Now, this is the sum of the individual demand function. Suppose the demand function for two individuals, you know, this equals to that, and this. Now, what is total demand here? Total demand is what? QAD plus QBD, which is the sum of these two. Just plug them in, and then you have QD equals to 300 minus 2PD. So this is the market demand curve, okay? Now, these two individuals, they have a demand curve given like this, and then we have the market demand curve like this, okay? Good. Let's move on, right? Let's move on. So we have QD plus that, we have 2. We have this plus this is 100, right? And then minus 2PD minus 0.5. Oh, this one should be minus 2.5, right? I think this one should be, this is a typo. Please, this should be 300 minus 2.5, okay? This is 200 minus 2.5. Sorry about that. This is 300 minus 2.5. So you see minus 2 here, and then minus 0.5 is minus 2.5, okay? So this is the correct answer, okay? This is correct, this is not, okay? Good. Let's move on. Now, the factors affecting changes in demand. Now, what are the factors affecting changes? Oh, of course, we have, I told you, the price of the good, price of other goods, that is price of related goods, income of the consumer, etc. Now, for the price of the good is known as the own price. When the price goes up, demand will fall. Now, this one is self-explanatory. Now, price of related goods. Now, changes in the price of related products also cause demand to change, right? Now, take, for example, substitutes, complement. Now, when we say two goods are substitutes, it means those goods can be used in the place of other goods, right? Now, if I have butter, even if I don't have margarine, if there is no margarine, I will still eat my bread, right? If I have margarine, there is no butter, I will still eat my bread. Understand? And then if I have tea and coffee also, if there is coffee, there is no tea, then I'll take tea. If there is tea, there is no coffee, I'll take coffee. Something like that. So, if you have tea but there is no coffee, you can take tea. If there is coffee but no tea, then you take coffee. So you can substitute one of these ones for the other because um, yield they all gives the consumer almost the same level of satisfaction or the same level of utility, right? So if let's say we go to the store, we see there is no Colgate, but there is Crest, I can buy Crest, as a substitute of what? Colgate. So the question therefore is, what will happen if the price of Colgate increases? Assuming that the price of Crest remains the same, what will happen? What will happen to the demand? What will happen to the demand for Crest if the price of Colgate increases? Assuming that the price of Crest remains the same, what will happen? If the price of Colgate increases, consumers are going to switch towards the substitute good, which is Crest, right? So more of Crest will be demanded. So as a matter of fact, if the price of the related product increases, the demand for the good will increase, right? Now remember, Colgate is related to Crest. So if the price of Colgate increases, assuming that the price of Crest remains the same, more consumers are going to buy Crest and less are going to buy Colgate because that price has increased. The demand for Colgate will fall. And what will happen to the price? What will happen to the demand for Crest? The demand for Crest will increase. So in that particular case, the increase in demand for Crest is what? A change in demand. It is not a change in the quantity demanded because it is a change that occurs as a result of what? An increase in the price of a related product. But when the price of Colgate increases and then the demand for Colgate falls, right? So how do you refer to that? That is referred to as what? It is referred to as a change in the quantity demanded because it is a change in the demand that will occur as a result of what? The change in the price of the good itself, right? So if the price of Colgate increases and then the demand for Colgate falls, then we are going to move along the demand curve, right? We are going to move upwards along the demand curve. So if the price increases, then that is a movement upwards along the demand curve. The demand is going to fall. Okay? So, and when the price, so what I'm saying here is, if you have the demand curve as this, right? So this is the price, and this is the quantity, right? Okay. Originally we are here. We have this one. Let's say this is Q1, right? And this is Q1. Now let's say, for example, for some reason the price increases to maybe P2. What happened here? So automatically the quantity falls to Q2, right? So there is a fall in the quantity and there is an increase in price. So how do you refer to this one? This is what? A change in the quantity demanded. Because this is a change in demand that will occur as a result of what? Changes in the own price of the good. It is not as a result of the changes in the other factors of production, other factors that affect the demand. It is a change that will occur as a result of changes in price. Okay, so let's only talk about factors of production here. But this is the factors that affect the demand for the good. Okay, so here you see it's a movement along the demand curve. This is Colgate, right? Okay, this is what? A change in the quantity demanded. And then you have Crest here, right? So what happens here? Now, both Colgate and Crest, these are substitute goods, right? So originally, we have the demand for Crest given as this. Let's say this is P, right? P1, okay? But what happened here? The price of Colgate increases, but the price of Crest remains the same. What happens there? The demand shifts to the what? To the right, right? So this is a shift in the demand to the right. So how do you call this one? This is a change in demand, right? So this is a change in demand, right? All right. So at the same price, right, more will be demanded. Q2. Now we have a complete displacement in the Colgate market. Now consumers are moving towards the Crest market to buy more Crest, okay? So what happens? We have more consumers coming here, and with the same price, the quantity has increased to Q2, okay? So that is why you see an increase in quantity here. So this is referred to as a change in demand. As a change in demand. It is not a change in the quantity demanded. It is a change in demand. A change that occurs as a result of changes in the other factors of demand. Other factors that affect demand or other than price. Okay? It is a change in demand as a result of changes in the other factors of demand. Okay? As a change in the other factors that affect demand. That is what a change in demand is. Okay? So here, the price of the good is L constant. Right? On the other side, the price of other factors that affect demand are L constant. You get a point? So this is a change in demand, and this is a change, and this is a change in the quantity demanded, and then this is a change in demand. So this is a change that will occur as what? As the price of other goods increases, right? The change that will occur as a result of changes in the other factors affecting demand. Okay? So the own price is held constant here, but other factors are allowed to vary, and so we expect the demand to shift to the right. Now, similarly, let's say, for example, the price of Colgate, let's say it falls. If the price of Colgate falls, right? And then the price of Crest remains the same, what will happen? If the price of Crest remains the same, but the price of Colgate falls, what will happen? You will expect people who are buying Crest, right? In the Crest market, they will now switch to what? Colgate. Because the price of Colgate has fallen. Have you seen? You see how consumers behave here. If the price of Colgate falls, then you're going to expect what? The demand for Crest to shift to the left. Now it's not going to shift to the right, it is going to shift to the left. If the price of Colgate, if the price, the demand for, if the demand for Crest will shift to the right, okay? And then what will happen to the quantity of Colgate demanded? The quantity of Colgate demanded will increase if the price falls, okay? If the price falls, more Colgates will be bought or will be demanded, and then less Crest will be demanded. So as a matter of fact, so if the price of Colgate falls, then we expect the demand for Crest to also fall. Have you seen? So if you look at this analysis, you realize that the demand for a good move in the same direction as the price of its close substitutes. It moves in the same direction as the price of its close substitutes. You get the point? That is to say, the Q, the QD, the PX, that is price of close substitutes, is what? Is always what? Positive. Is always positive. So the sign there is a plus. Now we are going to deal with this one more in detail when we look at the income effect and the substitution effect. Okay? So let's move on. I hope you are able to understand this one. Now, what about complement here? What about complement? Now, for complement, like let's say sugar and tea, if you have tea, of course you need sugar, right? Now, for sugar and tea, if the price of sugar increases, you expect the demand for tea to fall. You understand? So, because if the price of sugar increases, less will be demanded, and at the same time, if less sugar is demanded, we expect less tea to be demanded as well. So, as a matter of fact, if the price of sugar increases, the demand for tea will shift to the left. It will not shift to the right, right? So there is an inverse relationship between the demand for the good and the price of the related product, if the goods are complementary or if the goods are complement, right? So for complementary goods, these are goods that are used together. These are goods that consumers use together, right? They use those two goods together. Take, for example, car and gasoline. The price of gasoline increases, you expect less gas to be demanded. Well, in the short run, maybe in the long run, people will decide to maybe ride a bus if the price of gas continues to increase. So the demand for gas will fall in the long run, and people will decide to use the bus, and then less cars will be demanded. Okay, in the long run. But in the short run, because consumers are not able to adjust instantaneously, so in the short run, even though price of gas has increased, they will still continue to buy gas, right? But after they are able to do a lot of adjustments, and you realize that the demand for cars will fall in the long run when the price of gas continues to increase. So people will find other modes of transportation instead of buying gases at exorbitant prices. Get the point? So this is the relationship. So if you have complementary goods, when the price of a related product increases, the demand for the good falls. When the price of related product falls, the demand for the good increases. So in other words, the price of a related product and the quantity move in opposite direction. Okay, good. So as I said earlier, in the previous slide, you have the inverse relationship there, and then you have the flashlights, examples, battery, DVD and DVD player. Of course, if you have a DVD player, you need a DVD, right, to operate that. If you have a flashlight, of course, you need a battery. So if the price of battery increases, then people buy less flashlight. If the price of battery falls, more people buy flashlights, right? So these are all complementary goods. So as I explained earlier, you see this is Pepsi and Coca-Cola. These are two substitutes. When the price increases, what happens? The price of Coca-Cola remains the same. What happens? The demand curve shifts to the right, right? It shifts to the right. And then what happened here? More Coca-Cola is bought, and then less Pepsi is demanded because of what? The price has increased, right? Because these two goods are substituted. Now, people who used to buy Pepsi are now going to shift to Coca-Cola consumption, right? So you expect that demand to increase. Now, for complement, when the price of gasoline falls, you expect people to buy more gasoline, right? And if they buy more gasoline, right, the demand for cars or SUV will increase. You see, the fall in price of gasoline has resulted in what? In an increase in the demand for SUV. So people are going to buy more SUVs, because if price of gasoline continue to fall, let's say up to $1, or maybe let's say 90 cents, a lot of people, even students at Campbell, more students at Campbell buy SUVs, right? They will go, assuming everything remains the same, right? Ceteris paribus. Hey, come on, let's go. Now, for independent goods, the demand now changes in income and demand. Now, we talk about normal goods, we talk about inferior goods, we talk about gifting goods, right? Or we call them articles of ostentation. Now, for normal goods, these are goods for which the demand increases when the income of the consumer increases, right? Now, if you expect maybe if your income increases, instead of you buying more of this junk food, those fast food, you're gonna buy organic food. You're gonna start cooking in the house, making some nice dish in the house. No? But when your income falls, you're going to buy more inferior goods. So the demand for inferior goods will fall for people who are poor. So that's why you see so many people eating canned foods, low quality foods, right? So because of what? They are broke. People who are broke always buy inferior goods. They always go to the fast food restaurants when they are broke. But if you have something like maybe you have something like a windfall, right? You have a big windfall. Maybe all of a sudden you experience a big bump in your income, let's say by 600%. So what's going to happen? You are going to change your lifestyle. You are now going to buy, healthy product, healthy good, healthy food. You're going to buy brand name goods. You're going to buy organic food. Oh, you'll be doing a lot of shopping, So the demand for the good, for high quality goods, these are all normal goods, right? So an increase in your income will result in what? An increase in the demand if the good is what? Is a normal good, right? So, but if the good is an inferior good, then an increase in your income will lead to a fall in demand if the good is inferior. So if I get like a windfall, if I used to go to the fast food restaurant, I'm not going there anymore. I ain't going there anymore. I'm gonna buy organic food. I'm gonna start cooking in the house. You see, but when I'm broke, when I'm broke, then I'm going to visit the fast food restaurant more often than before. So this is what happens. So the demand for inferior goods, if the income falls, the income of the consumer falls, then there will be an increase in the demand for fast food. Okay? But if the income of the consumer increases, assuming all else remains the same, we expect the consumer to buy more of organic food. The consumer will start to cook in the house. So the demand for the good will increase, right? For normal goods. So normal goods are goods for which the demand increases as the income of the consumer increases, right? These are called normal goods. And then inferior goods are goods for which the demand falls as the income of the consumer increases. Okay? Or in other words, inferior goods are goods for which the demand increases as the income of the consumer falls. You understand? So for all inferior goods, if the income of the consumer increases, we expect less of those goods to be demanded. And for all normal goods, we expect more of them to be demanded if the consumer's income increases, and then we expect less of them to be demanded if the income of the consumer falls. Okay? So if the consumer all of a sudden is broke, he will not buy more of organic food, he will switch to what? Inferior goods. Okay? So more of the inferior goods will be demanded when the income falls. Now, demand and quantity demanded. So what is quantity demand? Quantity demand changes due to what? Changes in price. We've done that before. I talked about that earlier, so I don't need to talk about this again. Now, you know what change in demand is and what change in quantity demand is. So we have this normal and inferior goods here. Now, in a recession, take for example in a recession, what will happen when there is a recession? Oh, things are really tight, during a recession, things are really tough, difficult. So people start to go to the restaurant, fast food restaurant, or maybe buy canned food, right? Instead of buying more of organic food. So this will happen when there is a recession. Maybe we have something like a depression in the economy. Things are really tight, and so people buy more of these inferior goods. So more inferior goods will be demanded during a period of recession or a period of depression, right? So in a boom period where you have incomes are rising, you expect more of the normal goods to be demanded. Okay, let's move on. Now, we also have other determinants of demand like size of the market, number of consumers. That is how many consumers in the market, If you have a large number of consumers in the market, what do you expect? The demand for the goods shift to the right. More people will buy, right? So if the size of the market is very small, you expect less of the less of the good to be demanded, right? Okay. And then you also have expectation of future rises, increase or decrease in price, right? If you expect the price to rise in the future, right, to increase in the future, then you're going to delay the purchase of the good. Sorry, if you expect the price of the good to increase in the future, then what are you going to do? Are you going to delay the purchase of the good? No, you're going to buy now, right? You're going to buy more of the good at the moment, right? So more of the good will be demanded now than to wait for the price to increase, right? But if you expect the price of the good to fall in the future, the price to decrease in the future, then what are you going to do? You are going to delay the purchase of the good, right? You are going to delay. Now, I'm not going to buy now. Let me wait when the price goes down. And so less of the good will be demanded, okay? If you expect the price of the good to decrease in the future, less will be demanded at the current period. Now, weather condition. Of course, the changes in weather also affect the demand. You know, people buy more sweaters during the winter, right? And then they buy more umbrellas during the rainy season. So the demand for umbrellas will increase during the rainy season, you know, and then the demand for sweaters will increase during the cold season. And then you see the demand for flip-flops, tank tops, these all increases during summer, right? Okay. Changes in consumers' preferences. Again, we're going to talk about preferences when we deal with consumer theory, demand theory, right? Consumer preferences, right? So changes in consumer preferences also leads to a shift in the demand curve, right? If I prefer a particular good, even if the price is high, I'll buy it, right? So regardless of the price of the good, if I want to buy it, I'm gonna buy it. If that is what I like, you know. But if let's say I am not a pork eater, I don't eat pork, right? So even if the price falls to zero, even if it is offered for free, I'm not gonna buy that. I'm not gonna have it, even if it is offered for free, because I'm not a pork eater. I don't eat pork, so I am not going to have that. You see, so because I don't prefer that good, my preference is what? Fish. I eat more fish and vegetables. So because I prefer fish and vegetables, right? For me, the demand for those goods are very high, right? The demand for those goods, regardless of the price. Even if the price increases, I'll still buy those goods, okay? So because of a greater preference in those goods, more will also be demanded of those goods. Now, the shape of the demand curve. Now, if you look at the demand curve here, right? This is the demand curve for food. Now, why is it so steep like that? Why? Can anybody tell me why the demand curve for food is so steep? Because you cannot do without food. You cannot. Otherwise, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. You can't do without food. Otherwise, you will die. So it's a necessity. It is a necessity. That is why you see that score. That is why you see the steepness in that particular curve. It is steeper because regardless of whether the price increases, you're gonna buy. You're gonna continue to buy. You're not gonna reduce your consumption that much. So it is very insensitive to price changes. Okay. So that is why you see that curve is steep. It is that is why you see the steepness in that particular curve. Now look at the demand for mother, right? The demand for mother. Now, mother is a good, right? For people who actually engage in it, people who like to kill people, who like to commit homicide. Um, the demand for this is uh, the demand curve is flatter, right? It is flatter, because the probability of punishment here, capital punishment, because if you kill somebody, and if there are laws that stipulate that when you kill somebody, you're gonna be killed, right? You expect less murder to occur, right? Now, if you look at Between the period of 1930 and the 1960s, 60 something, 1969, you see, there was high capital punishment. So what do you expect to do in those periods? The demand for murder falls drastically. So in many states where you have capital punishment, you don't hear so many murders in those states, right? So capital punishment there, even though I don't favor capital punishment, but sometimes if you have capital punishment in place, um, you will have less murders in that particular state or that particular country. So, like in the country where I came from, because there is capital punishment there, you don't hear so many murders there. Because where I came from, they have zero tolerance for those things, those particular crimes. You kill somebody, you will be killed as well. So, and so in those particular states or those particular countries, you expect less murder to occur, than in countries where you have, zero capital punishment. If I know that if I kill somebody, I'm not going to be killed, you know, there will be an incentive for me to do that. I'll continue to do that. It's just like also somebody is driving recklessly, demand for reckless driving, right? If there is no strict penalty for reckless driving, let's say you have safety belts put in place, and then there are no strict laws for reckless driving, people will also engage in reckless driving, more reckless driving. So again, the demand for reckless driving, just like murder, is also flat, right? So it depends on what? The price that the culprits have to pay for committing that particular offense. Okay? Let's move on. Supply analysis here. What is supply? Again, just like the demand, we'll talk about want and demand. Here we are going to talk about what? The output, right? The output and then the supply, right? So the output of the good is different from the supply, what you supply in the market. Now, if I produce, let's say, 7 bushels or 7 bags of rice, and then I'm willing to offer maybe 5 bags of rice for sale, then the supply is 5 bags. It's not 7. Okay? So it is what the farms are willing to offer for sale at a given price. It's a given point in time. So supply here does not mean the output of the farm. So the farm may produce 1,000 tons of rice, but if he is willing to offer, let's say, 500 tons of rice for sale, then 500 tons becomes a supply. 1,000 tons becomes the output, and then 500 tons becomes the supply. Okay? So there's a difference here between output and supply. So what the farm, the producer, is willing to offer for sale at the given price, at the going market price, is what is referred to as a supply. If I'm a farmer, I produce 1,000 bags of rice at one particular farming season, and I decided to offer 800 bags of rice for sale. Then the 800 bags of rice is the supply, and then the 1,000 bags is the output. So supply and output are not the same. Just like demand and want are not the same, supply and output are not the same. I hope you get the point I'm making. Now, the supply curve here also shows the relationship between the price and what? The quantity. So it is a price quantity relationship here. So the law of supply here, unlike demand, there is no law of supply that requires the market supply to have a particular slope, right? So the market supply curve can have different slopes. You have backward bending supply curve, you have vertical, you have downward, you have upward sloping supply curves, right? So there is no particular law here. Okay, so supply curve can have different slopes. You have backward bending. We're going to be looking at those backward bending supply curves later, and the vertical and downward sloping supply curves. Okay, but for the time being, we assume that price and supply move in the same direction. When the price increases, supply also increases. Okay. Okay, so we're going to use that one. The law of supply here holds, and we have when the price increases, supply also increases. Okay, because when the price increases, the farm or the producer will offer more of the good for sale. Okay, to capture what? The increase in receipts. All right. So supply and quantity supply. Again, just like demand and quantity demand, change in quantity supply is refers to what? Movement along the same supply curve. And a change in supply refers to what? Either an increase or a decrease in supply due to changes in the other factors affecting supply. For example, factors of production, price of other goods, level of technology, and productive capacity, etc., are holding the price of the other good constant, or the good constant. So this is a shift in the supply curve, right? So when we talk about the changes in the other factors affecting supply, then we are referring to as a change in supply. So an increase in quantity supply refers to what? Is a rightward movement along the supply curve. You see? An increase in quantity supply is a rightward movement, right? And then an increase in supply. Remember, it is different. An increase in supply, an increase in the quantity supply, and an increase in supply. These are different. An increase in supply is what? A change in supply, right? An increase in the quantity supply is what? It's a movement along the same supply curve. You understand? So you have to be very careful with these two terminologies. Increase in the quantity supply, increase in supply. Increase in supply refers to what? A change in supply. It refers to a shift in the supply curve. Okay? So when the supply increases, the supply curve is going to shift to the right. When the supply curve falls, it is going to shift to the left, right? So take, for example, there is taxation here. Government decides to tax the good. So what do you expect? The supply is going to fall, right? So it will shift to the left. Okay? So if there are subsidies, maybe they provide subsidies, what will happen? You expect supply to increase, right? So it will shift to the right. Okay? So an increase in the quantity supply refers to what? Movements along the supply. Okay? Good. Likewise, a decrease in the quantity supply is what? A leftward movement along the supply curve. And a decrease in supply is also what? It's a leftward shift in the supply curve. The supply curve will shift to the left. And this will occur when there is maybe an increase in taxation. All right. So we have these following factors that affect demand: technology, price of other goods, factors of production, level of technology, productive capacity, number of producers, price of related products, future pricing, taxation, etc. Just like I said, level of technology. Now, if let's say you have the factor of production here, the cost of the input, right? If the cost of the input increases, what do you expect? You expect less of the good to be supplied, right? So because factor of production, cost of the input there is one factor of production, cost of the input. If let's say the cost of labor also increases, then we expect the demand, the supply of the good to fall. You expect the supply of the goods to fall, less will be supplied, right? And you look at technology, right? Advancement in technology, right? The productive capacity, you know, if the plant size, if the farm decides to increase maybe plant size so as to increase the productive capacity, so more will be supplied than if the plant size is so small. Again, improvement in technology also leads to what? An increase in supply. Then less technology, again, will lead to what? Or, or outdated technology will also lead to what? A decrease in supply. Okay. Again, look at the number of producers in the markets. If you expect the supply of the goods to increase, if there are more producers, the number of producers increases. If the number of producers increases for that particular commodity, then the supply will go up. The number of producers fall, then the supply will go down. Okay. All right. So now let's look at the supply function here. We have the direct supply function, which is giving us that. And then again, we have the inverse supply function, which is giving us this. So just like what we did with the demand, so just make PS the subject. Okay. Now let's move on to equilibrium analysis. Now, what is equilibrium? All right. What is equilibrium here? When you attain equilibrium, it's a situation when once you attain that equilibrium, there will be no exogenous factors. Right? That particular situation will continue indefinitely, provided there are no exogenous factors that will cause that equilibrium to change. Understand? So, provided all exogenous factors of the system remain unchanged. If all exogenous factors remain unchanged, then that particular condition will continue. So when an equilibrium is attained, nothing will force that condition to change. Okay? It will continue indefinitely, provided there are no other exogenous factors to the system, right, that will cause them to change. Now, let's look at one typical example here. We have a bowl here. Now, if you look at Ben Samko microeconomics, you remember the PDF document I sent to you for all the resources. Make sure you go through that. That book is so easy, self-explanatory, right? So, so here, what do you observe here? You see, you have these three balls here. You have the ball at point B, and then you have it at point C, and then point A, right? Now, if the ball is at point C, is it in equilibrium? No, it is not in equilibrium, because it is not at a state of rest. So it has not attained equilibrium. It will only attain equilibrium if this ball falls to point B. Okay? Likewise, the ball at point C will only be in equilibrium if it falls to point B here. Right? So there is a force of gravity here. So if the ball is at point A, at point C, or point A, the force of gravity will pull those balls down to point B. Once they get to that point of rest, once they attain that one, right, they will continue to be there indefinitely, provided there are no exogenous factors that will cause them to move away from that point. Okay, like for example, the ball comes down here to point B. If no one takes them, like somebody will come and take the ball and then try to put it back to point C, it will remain there indefinitely. Okay, except somebody comes and then pick the ball and decided to put it back to point A. Get the point I'm making? So once the ball gets to point B, it will stay there forever, indefinitely, unless somebody comes and say, oh, okay, I don't want to sit there. Let me put it on at point C, or let me put it at point A. Okay? So that is the only time when that equilibrium will change. Okay? But once it has been attained at point B, it will remain there forever, indefinitely, provided there are no other exogenous factors that will cause that equilibrium to change. Okay? So that is the equilibrium. So what is the market now? The market, we have the exchange mechanism. It's an exchange mechanism that allows buyers and sellers to trade their goods, right, and services. So there is a lot of trading going on in the market. You have the market for tomatoes, market for corn, market for bananas, etc. Right? So the equilibrium here is referred to as a market clearing condition. When we say market clearing, it means what? The quantity supply equals to the quantity demanded. So that is the market clearing, simple and straightforward, right? There is no excess demand. When the market clears, there is no excess demand and no excess supply. Nothing like that happens, okay? So, but if there is excess demand in the market, what happens? The quantity demanded is more than the quantity supply. So that means price will increase, okay? If okay, this one means this one is if. Oh, I left out the I, right? Okay, but this is if. If there is excess supply, then quantity supply is greater than quantity demanded. So that will force what? It will what? It will force price to decrease. It will beat down the price, right? So if there is excess demand, that will what? Beat up the price. It will beat up the price, okay? So a point is, equilibrium is reached when all bidding stops. When all bidding stops, okay? So there will be no bidding up the price, there will be no bidding down the price. So everything remains at that particular level. So at equilibrium, both consumers and sellers are able to buy or sell as much as they want. So that means nobody is able to change his behavior. Once the sellers, may not try to sell more at a higher price, or maybe increase their price, or maybe the consumers trying to increase their demand. Okay, so at that particular price, at that particular point, nobody's willing to change their behavior. Okay, or let's say the seller trying to lower the price so that he can sell more. Okay, or maybe increase or maybe increase the price, maybe to capture the excess demand in the market. So the equilibrium price, this is the price at which consumers and sellers can buy or sell as much as they want. They can buy as much as they want, okay? So you have the equilibrium quantity, which is just the quantity bought and sold at the equilibrium price. And then the excess demand refers to the excess of quantity demand over quantity supply at the prevailing price. And then the excess supply refers to the excess of quantity supply over quantity demanded at the prevailing price. Got it? Now let's look at this condition of the grocery here. Now, if you look to the left here, this is a case in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a country in Southern Africa. During the reigns of Robert Mugabe. Now, because of those land seizures, when those land, the lands of the land of the white farmers. Now there was a lot of seizure of agricultural lands. So they transferred the land from the white farmers to the black people. So what happens there? The production of goods falls because, one, The blacks do not have they do not have the resources, you know, to maintain the production level. And even though they own the farms now, they do not have the resources to maintain the production level. So there was a fall in supply. Okay, there was a fall in supply because most of the farms were not producing much, like in the case when these white farmers were owning those farmlands. So during the time when the white farmers were owning the farmlands, you know, they have a lot of resources, and they also use a lot of technology, you know, to produce goods. And so during those periods, you see most of the shelves were stocked, right? So, but during the reigns of Robert Mugabe, if you go to Zimbabwe, this picture was taken in Zimbabwe. So you go to the shelves, you didn't see anything on the shelves. There was nothing on the shelves, right? So there was nothing on the shelves here, even though people want to buy the good, right? But the supply there is not there. The supply is not there. In other words, people demand the goods more than the amount available. So there is excess demand in this particular country. And so what happened? This will force this will force the prices to increase, right? Now let's look at this case. This is the case in Western Europe. When you have you go to the supermarkets, you see all shelves stocked with goods, right? So here there is an excess supply of goods here. So all the shelves are stocked, well stocked. So people can go there and buy whatever they want to buy, you know. So when this particular market is in equilibrium, right? There is neither excess demand here, no excess supply, but in fact, this one should be neither excess supply, no excess demand. Sorry, I think this one should not be excess supply, okay? Here, say equilibrium, right? The market is in equilibrium. Equilibrium, okay? There you go. So there is neither excess supply nor excess demand, okay? So the market is in equilibrium here. I go to the store, I want to buy, I go there to buy something, whatever I want to buy, I can buy. Whatever I want to buy, I can buy when the market is in equilibrium. Here, this market is not in equilibrium. Not in equilibrium. Yeah, I should have added this one. Not in equilibrium. It is not in equilibrium because there is excess supply, excess demand, right? Not in equilibrium. Not in equilibrium. Voila. So this market is not in equilibrium. I go to the market to buy something. I can't buy whatever I want to buy. The market is not in equilibrium. There is excess demand here. Demand exceeds supply. Okay? I go to the market here. This market is in equilibrium. All the shelves are well stocked with goods. So I can say there is excess supply here or there is an equilibrium. The market is in equilibrium. In other words, I say there is neither excess supply nor excess demand here. So the market is in equilibrium here. Here, there is neither excess supply nor excess demand. Okay? The market is in equilibrium here. Here, there is what? Excess demand. So the market is not in equilibrium. Here, there is neither excess supply nor excess demand. So the market is what? The market is in equilibrium. So the market is in equilibrium here, and then it is in disequilibrium here because there is excess demand. So I go there, there is nothing on the shelf, I can't buy anything. I want to buy something, but I can't get it. I have the money, but I can't get it. I can't get the goods. Here, I have the money. The stocks, the shelves were well stocked with goods. I can buy the goods, and so the market is what? In equilibrium. To the left, the market is not in equilibrium because the shelves were all empty. So I go there with my money, I can't get the goods I want. Okay? So there is excess demand over there. Okay, let's move on. So when there is excess supply, of course, you have demand, supply greater than demand, and then when you have excess demand, then demand is also greater than supply. When you have excess demand, what will happen to the price? The price will increase until it reaches this point, right? Likewise, when you have excess supplies, prices will fall until it reaches equilibrium. Now, let's look at the consumer and producer surplus here. What is the consumer and then the producer surplus, right? Consumer and producer surplus. Minimum price, supply is willing to offer for sale. Then maximum amount a consumer will be willing to pay for a good or service, right? Then what is the extra benefit that I'm going to gain by buying a good? If I go to the market, right? Consumer surplus, I go to the market, I want to buy something, let's say which costs $20. If I go there and I was actually willing to pay $25, even though it costs like $10, then the excess between those two is my consumer surplus, right? So I'm actually willing to pay $25, but it costs like $10. So the difference is what? Is the consumer surplus. Now for producer surplus, it's just again the extra benefit gained by the producer. So this for producer surplus, the benefit is gained by what? The producer. And then for consumer surplus, it is gained by the consumer. Okay. So the consumer surplus and the producer surplus are very essential in assessing the efficiency of tax, cost of taxation. So we're going to look at that one later on in the course. Now, I don't want you to be labeled with this integral business, even though if you want to do that, you can do it. But use integral calculus to do consumer surplus as well as producer surplus. But you can also use a simple method to do that. Suppose you have demand function for candles is given by 80 P equals to 80 minus 5 PD, and the supply function is given by QS equals to that. Determine the consumer and producer surplus, right? So how do we do that? It's so simple. We just equate these two, and then we solve. Demand equals to supply, we equate them, find the value of PD. But remember, when we say PD and PS, just say PD in equilibrium, PD equals to PS equals to P. Okay, just change everything to P, and then it becomes that, and then you find the answer, which is 8. So if you plug this into the demand function, you have the demand price equals to that, and then the demand given as 40. Now the equivalent values are just 8 and 40. Now the consumer surplus, willingness to pay minus consumer's expenditure. So the willingness to pay is the integral of that to Q star. Then if we do that, we solve, we're going to have a Q60, 160, right? Now this one is a bit complex for you guys. For those of you who don't know integral calculus, you have this as the integral calculus, 16 minus 0.2 Q minus 8. So you want to differentiate this 16. 8 minus 0.2, you want to differentiate this, should be what? 8 is the same thing as what? 8q to the power 0, right? That is the same thing as 8, because q to the 0 is just 1. So 0 plus 1 over 0 plus 1. 0 plus 1 is just 1. So that's why we have 8q, right? And then this one minus 0 0.2. Now we have q to the 1, but we have to see n plus 1 over n plus 1, right? 1 plus 1 is 2, which is q squared over 1 plus 1, 2. 0 0.2 q squared over 2, right? 0 to 40. And then we solve. We have 160, okay? Then we do the same thing for the supply, right? And then we plug in those ones. That is producer revenue minus needed revenue. And then we get that, which is also the producer surplus is 1. Oh, I don't know what happened here. It should be 160 as well. Producer surplus, and that should be 160. I don't know exactly what happened, but you can take a look at that one later on. Now, we look at increase in price. When the price increases, what happens? If the price increases, right? Let's say from P0 to P1, it reduces the consumer surplus. Remember, the consumer surplus is this whole area under the demand curve, right? Right? Before it was this area, right? Now, because of the increase in price, the consumer surplus reduces to what? This one, right? So an increase in price or reduces the welfare of the consumer, right? But does it reduces the welfare of the producer? No. An increase in price increases the welfare of the producer, okay? So if the price originally, the supply curve, the producer surplus was this region, right? And if the price increases, then the farm is going to enjoy a lot of producer surplus. So if it increases to P2, then the producer surplus will be this whole rectangle, okay? So there is an increase in producer surplus by this area, this small area. So there is an increase in welfare here. So increase in what? Welfare, right? Sorry. Increase welfare here when price increases, right? Now remember, when the price increases for the producer and for the consumer, there is what? There is a decrease, right? A decrease in what? Welfare, right? Welfare falls. If I go to the market and the price all of a sudden increases, that means my welfare has fallen down, right? Has fallen. So that's the idea. So let's look at the consumer surplus here. Now, this is basically what you're going to be doing. This simple computation is so easy. Now, you have the consumer surplus, half times base times height. Now, look at the consumer surplus here, 12, 8, right? And then you have 12 minus 8, and then 40 minus 0. Remember, this is 0. 40 minus 0 times 12 minus 8, this is half times, this is 8, right? Okay. So, and now the producer surplus, you have 40 minus this, 8 minus that, which is also 80. Consumer surplus for producer surplus, 80 plus 80 equals to 160, right? 160. Right. So consumer surplus is 80, producer surplus is 80, and so the answer is 160. Okay. Good. So this is what I expected to know. Now let's look at elasticity here. What is the concept of elasticity? Elasticity is just the degree of sensitivity of one variable as the other variable changes, right? Price elasticity of demand measures the degree of responsiveness of demand to changes in price. It shows how demand increases as price increases, right? How demand responds to changes in price. Now, demand is perfectly elastic if the elasticity of demand is infinity. Now, delta Q over delta P times P over Q, that's elasticity. It is elastic if elastic of demand is between infinity and -1, or elastic of demand is greater than 1. Okay, let's say 1.5, 1.6. Okay, it is unitary if elastic of demand equals to 1. That is, a change in price will lead to an equal change in the quantity demanded. Okay, now demand is elastic if a change in price, right, will lead to what? A more than proportionate change in the quantity demanded. Then demand is elastic. Now demand is inelastic if a change in price will lead to what? A less than proportionate change in the quantity demanded. Okay, so here there will be a less than proportionate change in the quantity demanded. In other words, demand is insensitive to price changes. And then demand is elastic if demand is sensitive, highly sensitive to price changes. Okay. Now for perfectly inelastic demand, these are extreme cases, right? For perfectly inelastic demand, the demand curve is vertical to the vertical axis, parallel to the vertical axis. So whatever the price, the same amount will be demanded, whatever the price. So take, for example, insulin. For somebody who is a diabetic, the demand for insulin is perfectly inelastic. So whatever the price, the consumer will still buy the same amount of vials of insulin. It will still buy the same amount. Regardless of whether the price increases or not, it will still continue to buy the same amount of insulin. Okay, so demand there is perfectly inelastic. So demand is insensitive to changes in price. Okay, so regardless of the price, so same amount will be demanded, and demand is perfectly inelastic. So for perfectly elastic demand, you have this as in the case of perfect competitive markets. Now, if you try to increase the price, nothing will be sold. Likewise, if you reduce the price, an infinite amount of the goods will be demanded, right? You increase the price, an infinite amount of the goods will be demanded. Okay, so let's continue. Now, let's move on to one typical aspect here, constant elastic demand curve. Now, I presume this is the last one we're going to be looking at. Constant elastic demand curve is a demand curve of the form Q equals to AP to the minus B, right? Now, A and B are positive constants. Now, remember, for all constant elastic demand curves, the price elasticity of demand is always the exponent of the price. It is so easy. Just take that exponent as elasticity. That is the elasticity, okay? For all constant elasticity of demand, the price elasticity of demand is measured at a point, at a particular point. So it's obtained as what? The price at a particular point is what? The QDP multiplied by P over Q, right? The QDP times P over Q. Now let's take, for example, in this case, we have Q equals to A to the P minus B. What is the price elasticity of demand here? All we need to do is to find the QDP here. If we differentiate this with respect to P, we're going to have what? Take the minus B here, and then A, P to the minus B, and then we always subtract 1 from our minus 1, right? So let us simplify this. This one is going to be minus B, A. Then remember, P to the minus B minus 1 is the same thing as P to the minus B over P, right? So that this becomes minus B, AP to the B over P, right? What is AP to the minus B? AP to the minus B is just Q, right? So minus BQ, Q over P. So this is the QDP. Now multiply by the price times the quantity, right? So minus B, Q over P times P over Q. Now remember, this P and this P will cancel. This Q and this Q will also cancel. It's 1, right? So 1 times PB, 1 times B minus B is minus B. So this is the elasticity, right? So that's why I say for all constant elasticity of demand curve, the price elasticity of demand is just the exponent, right? Now let's take one typical example here. We have a Q equals to 100 P to the minus 2 over 3, right? 100 to the minus 2 over 3. What is the QDP here? The QDP is what? It's minus 2 over 3, 100 e to the minus 2 over 3, and then minus 1, right? That is that. Now, elasticity now want to multiply by what? This by what? P over Q. But remember, this is the same as what? Minus 2 over 3, 100 e to the minus 2 over 3 divided by P, right? That is the same as this one. So if we multiply this by P here over our Q, what happens? This will cancel this. Remember, this Q is the same as this term, right? It will also cancel this Q, right? Because Q, according to this equation, is e to the minus 2 over 3. So what is our answer? Our answer is this, just this one, minus 2 over 3, right? And minus 2 over 3 here, absolute value is less than 1, right? So demand is what? Inelastic. Inelastic. Now you know why we find the absolute value, because of this negative sign. The absolute value of minus 1 is just 1. Okay? The absolute value of minus 2 over 3 is just 2 over 3. Do you know how to find the absolute value? Have you ever done that before? Okay. Now the absolute value is what? Is that value raised to the power 2, right? Raised to the power 2, all to the power half. You got it? You got the point I'm making? That's the absolute value. The absolute value of minus a is minus a times minus a, right? Which is a squared, right? Right? Because minus and minus is plus. Minus a times minus a is minus a times minus a is plus a squared, right? And then take the square root of that. That gives you what? A. You got it? That's how you get the absolute value. Right? So you take minus 2. Absolute value of minus 2 is minus 2 raised to the power minus 2, and then I take the square root of that, right? Minus 2 raised to the power 2 is what? Minus 2 times 2 is 4, and then the square root of 4 is what? 2, right? So the absolute value of a negative number is the positive number. You understand? Okay. So we just try to change the sign here. So the absolute value of minus 2 over 3 is just 2 over 3. And 2 over 3 is what? It's less than 1. Let's continue. Now the demand, determinant of elasticity. Demand, you have necessities, luxuries. Now for necessity, things that you need for life, to survive, food, irrespective of any increase in price of food, you still buy amount of food. So demand there is what? Is inelastic. So the demand for food is inelastic. Now take for the case for luxuries. The demand for luxury is elastic, so that demand curve is flatter than the demand curve for food. Now, for all luxuries, the demand is elastic. It's elastic in the sense that it is very sensitive to price changes, because for all luxuries, there are so many substitutes. Now, people can move away from that good and then move to another good, right? For luxuries, the demand for luxuries is elastic, because people can move away from the good for any price. It is high. Demand for luxury is highly sensitive to price changes. So because it is highly sensitive to price changes, that is why it is elastic. Okay. Now this could be the demand for luxury, this first diagram, and this could be the demand for food. Okay. And then this could be the demand for insulin, perfectly inelastic. Now, things that you cannot do without. You're going to buy the same amount. Take, like, for example, salt. You're going to use the same amount of salt, regardless of the price. The same quantity of salt will be used, okay? Now, fewer or many substitutes, right? If the good has so many substitutes, you expect the demand to be elastic. And then if it has fewer substitutes, the demand to be what? Inelastic, okay? Inelastic means the demand is what? Less than 1, okay? Elastic means it is greater than 1. Perfectly elastic is what? Infinity. Perfectly elastic, infinity. Perfectly elastic is minus what? Infinity. Okay? Sorry, perfectly elastic is 0. Okay? Perfectly elastic means is what? The elastic demand is what? 0. And then perfectly elastic is what? Infinity. And then inelastic is what? Less than 1. Elastic is what? Greater than 1. Okay? So you have to know that one. Okay? Again, time period, so we have the short run, the long run. Sometimes in the short run, people are not able to adjust, to any price changes, so they'll still buy the good. So demand is inelastic in the short run. But if they are able to adjust in the long run, then any increase in price, demand will fall. So it's demand is in the long run is more elastic. Okay. And then the fraction of the consumer's budgets. Again, I want you to look at Bensaco under this elasticity. I think you'll get more on this one. And then look also at, read also chapter 1. Make sure you go through the whole of chapter 1 for price theory, and then you'll be able to understand all these things. Okay? Now, let's look at cross price elasticity of demand. What is cross price? Elasticity of demand is the degree of responsiveness. Demand of one good to changes in the price of the other goods. So now we are looking at the price of substitute, complement, independent goods, right? So for substitute goods, right, the cross price is what? It's positive. For complement, it is negative because when the price of a complement increases, the demand for the good what? Falls, right? That's why it's negative. You got it? And then for independent goods, the cross price elasticity is what? Is 0. Regardless of any changes in the price of the good or the other good, the price of the goods the quantity of the good remains unchanged. Okay, so for cross price elasticity, for independent goods, the cross price elasticity is 0. For substitute goods, the cross price elasticity of demand is positive. For complementary goods, the cross price elasticity of demand is negative. Please note this one. The cross price elasticity of demand for complementary goods is negative because if the price of the related product increases, we expect the demand for the complement to fall. That is why it is negative. For substitute goods, the cross price elasticity of demand is positive. The reason is that if the price of the related product increases, all else remains the same, we expect the demand for the good to also increase. If the price of this related product falls, the quantity demanded of the demand for the substitute goods will also fall. That is why the cross price elasticity is positive. For independent goods, the cross price elasticity is 0, regardless of any change in the price of the other good. The quantity of the independent good will remain unchanged. Okay. Now we look at income elasticity of demand. Again, it's the degree of responsiveness of demand to changes in what? Income. This time it is income, right? For normal goods, the income elasticity of demand is what? Positive. Right? For inferior good, it is what? Negative. Now the reason is that for normal goods, if the individual's income increases, then more of the normal good will be demanded, right? If the individual income falls, then less of the normal good will be demanded, okay? So if the income of the individual increases, less of the inferior good will be demanded. That is why it is negative. And if the income of the individual falls, more of the inferior goods, like fast food restaurant goods, will increase. Okay, that's why it is negative. Good. Now we look at the prices of supplies. Again, the same degree of supply, changes in price. Now the same analogy holds for this one. And then I think we've come to the end of this. So I want to wrap up this lecture with some elasticity estimates. Now, in many of the researches that are done, we use the Cobb-Douglas type models to, to obtain the elasticities. We simply log linearize the function. Once we log linearize the function, and then we find the derivatives of a function d log g, let's say d log p, pg, that gives us alpha, right? So d log g, and then d log pg, this is equals to what? Alpha. And this is the elasticity with respect to the price of gasoline, right? So this is elasticity. And then the elasticity with respect to diesel, again, is beta. And then the elasticity with respect to income is what? Is gamma. Remember, d log g is just elasticity. D log g, d log pg is the elasticity, okay? Elasticity. So elasticity is not just an abstract concept, right? We can use this one in real life. We can go out, collect the data, right? Go out to get the price of gasoline, price of diesel, and then real income. And then we try to model this one. We do the modeling here, and then we run the regression. Once we take the logarithms of each one, we run the regression, right? So when we run the regression, then the coefficient of that regression equation becomes what? The elasticity, okay? It becomes the elasticity. So what I want you to do is, I need you, as a practice, I want you to use the same model, right? If you can go and get the prices of, maybe get the price of gasoline and the price of diesel, get the price of diesel, just get the price. You can do that for a period of about let's say you can go to any website. I think you'll be able to get the price of gasoline for a period of maybe 10 months, right? You can just do like 10 months, and then you get the real income for, for like 10 months. If you go to the Bureau of Economic Analysis website, I think you'll be able to get those data. So get those ones, put them in Excel, and then plug them in Excel, and try to run the regression. If you don't know how to run the regression in Excel, I will show you. You can send me an email, then maybe I'll give you a tutorial on how to use the Excel to run regressions, okay? It is simple and straightforward. You will be able to do that, I guess. So I want you, as a practice, please go home and try to do this one, okay? Get the elasticities, elasticity measures, you understand? And then remember, the QD here is just the demand for gasoline. Let's say the demand for gasoline by people, how many gallons do they buy, or so, something like that, right? How many gallons of gasoline do they buy per period? So you can get that data from maybe the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and try to do that regression. And then you will see what I'm talking here, what I'm saying here. You will see that the elasticity here is negative, the price elasticity of gasoline is negative, and then that of diesel, I don't know if it is a substitute, then it's going to be positive. So try to do that one. That will be like an exercise for you. I want you to start to do some modeling. But as a first start, I want you to use this model. Just use this model. Then go get data. Just get data for 10 months, right? I don't want you to run like a large. I don't want you to use large data sets. I want you to just restrict that just to 10 data points, okay? And then run that regression, play around it, and then try to see these things I'm talking about, okay? So I think we have to stop so far. So and, I wish you all the best. And also, please, I want you to read the whole of chapter 1. Make sure you read Demand and Supply, also that Microeconomics by Ben Sanko. Go through that. Just try to flip through those pages. I think you'll be fine. And so the next class, we're going to look at consumer demand theory, okay? We're going to look at consumer demand theory. Bye.